I'm Carolyn Holzman, and this is Confessions of an SEO. If you're not a frequent listener, just know they run about 15 minutes, give or take. And Season 6 is the exploration of the physics of the information extraction from our web content by the AI models, GEO citations, and how to survive it as a SEO providing services. Welcome to Season 6, Episode 33 of Confessions, and what could be more perfect than on this next to last episode, crafted in the mountains, than a fun recap of all our summer shows. I know it seems like I'm randomly pulling topics out of thin air. Even to me, it feels a little bit random. And while there is no quiz, as I look at them in retrospect, I sort of see an arc of some direction moving forward. And part of the reason I stay energized in this slow-moving awareness pattern in our industry, I am absolutely certain that we will all end up on essentially the same page. We are deep in the trenches in a process of developing GEO and AEO engineering standards. GEO stands for Generative Engine Optimization, and AEO is Answer Engine Optimization. And I really see them sort of merging and evolving. And what an exciting time to be in SEO. We're learning new letters as if we're tech jocks. So if you're looking for the place to get a handle and a grip on what turns content into viable citations, you won't want to miss the next Visibility Mastery group, and it's open to all VizzEx users. You're eligible to sign up. It starts September 23rd. There's a link in the description, or you can just Google VizzEx AI Visibility Mastery. It is a 12-month course, and the first 8 weeks we meet weekly, and then after that it's once a month. Now, just in case you're wondering, there's a free version of the WordPress plugin on the directory, plugin directory, and all you have to do is Google free VizzEx basic plugin, and it's in the overlays and organics. You literally cannot miss it. And just to give you a taste of what's cooking in the oven, it's so exciting. We've been able to generate topic and brand citations within 4 days of publishing new content, starting first with Perplexity and Claude. Gemini takes longer. It's at least 14 days. And we're excited because we're running citation studies that the data that we're getting back so far is literally going to blow a hole in this popular idea that some brands are just so big that they're not going to be able to be moved out of citation spots. What we're seeing are small brands are competing and winning when they use VizzEx Pro. All right, so what did we do this summer? This will be like my essay, what I did summer of 2026. All right. So the first group of I could put together, it was basically like defining what AI engines actually want from our websites and why chasing after keywords is dead. little drama there, right? So the June 2nd episode, What AI Models Want, we talked about moving past keywords. AI assistants are searching for unique, original analysis. And this is mechanically what they call information gain, and to be able to answer complex prompts. Now, that episode was prompted by Michael King's article in which he sees agentic RAG fan-out queries as an inevitable effect in the models. I don't. We don't. In fact, the data tilts towards agentic RAG, that fan-out queries are an inevitable result only because the models cannot find the content providing the on-domain proof of the claims made in the HTML. And research supported by server logs says it is possible to bypass the agentic loop altogether. I mean, I do it every day. So then I looked at the June 9th episode about the myth of the LLMs.txt file. If you don't know what those are, it's kind of like a standalone file, kind of like a summary, but it's done in markdown form, which is different than, let's say, TXT or files. But it is a text file, but it's basically broken down like that. And I do not advocate for the use of these files. In fact, kind of the opposite. I see them as creating a false sense of compliance by laypersons who just read an article and they think, these files are required the same way that a robot's TXT file is. No, they are not, no matter what some tool tells you. And second, these files cannot pass a symmetry gate. There is no way for a machine to know with any certainty that what such a file contains is true, because it can only read about it. It can't compare it to a picture. And that's a huge aspect of this sort of first level of trust. There's also a relevancy artifact. I mean, they're kind of like a holdover from legacy SEO, that somehow these instructions on the page, they just, how can I say this? It's like they're so unnecessary, okay? That if you are structuring your content, that's what they want. They don't need to see a summary of what you're telling them. They need to be able to prove to themselves what you're telling them. And not to mention, when you add essentially dubious files, that creates another page of content that's going to burn your valuable crawl budget. And there's zero return for you. Nothing. All right. The other one was the June 16th, the tweak trap. Why editing your pages over and over and over disrupts the database baselines, triggering index volatility. And that's my favorite kind of, just looking at it, because I know myself, very often the first thing when you see something you don't expect, you're like, how can I make that change on the page? And so I catch myself. And the reason why this is such a huge thing that no one really recognizes is like when we see a big brand's organic traffic graph kind of plummet off of a vertical cliff. They call it the Mount AI. The search industry always rushes to the same narrative-driven explanation that has no bearing mathematically. They blame quality updates, AI content penalties, or this vague concept of intent satisfaction metrics. They sound official, but they mean nothing. So what is really happening is, as these edits are dribbling in, they're making edits on a daily basis, causing a huge amount of cached content getting dumped over and over and over again. So imagine cleaning up the kitchen, and every time you come back to it, it's a mess and you have to re-clean it. So don't fall into the tweak trap. It's just not worth it. All right, June 23rd, we talked about the GEO paradox. And what that one was about was how to protect your brand. You can't write average answers, which the AI steals and absorbs without credit. That's what they do with that. And nor can your server be too expensive to retrieve, because that's what forces the AI to skip citing you to save on the computational costs. And in that show, I really advocate, the best place to be is cheaper to cite than to absorb. And you can force citations by serving unique answers within a very low computational structure and retain the link. That, to me, is the sweet spot. So then I found 3 episodes regarding the constraints of computational requirements for these models. So the first one, June 30th, House Fresh Reborn. In this episode, I spoke about the real authority is not about brand history. It's rather a structural server floor validation that confirms your architecture of your site is not that expensive to crawl. Now, HouseFresh has a unique situation. The content on that domain is noisy and expensive, but they have a very high value answer quotient. And even though they've dropped in visibility, AI visibility, since March 2026, each month, at least through the lens of SEMrush data, they have a net negative in AI visibility each and every month. And yet they're advancing in their organic in the search. So it's kind of weird to see the bi-directional two things. But again, like I say, they have a very unique situation. I go through that in the show. And I would love to get this into a citation study, but can't put everything in there. So plus we're about to come into a spam and then a core update. So I'm going to make a note to check in on that data next month to see if I hear any operatic sopranos. All right. So then July 7th, we talked about the crawl scheduler as a power grid, the way the search engines work them. And looking at server logs, it became clear. And at the time of that recording, I was talking about Google, but I have since seen it in Bing, where they allocate crawl capacities, like crawl budgets, like they're working with a very finite utility grid, and they're prioritizing sites that minimize the search engine's electric bills. So high compute text for them, that means less crawl budget for you, which led right into the August 4th. It was like 5 seconds or you're burning host load. About a month after that other episode where Google updated their crawl budget documentation. And that states essentially the exact same thing we saw in the logs. That if you're going to, they basically are saying, if you're going to make us spend our money and resources like crazy, we're going to put that on your crawl budget tab. And once you've exhausted your allowance, we're going to cut you off from our crawler system, going to make it crawl less and less, and reduce the allowance you have in your crawl budget. So that was fun, right? All right. And then there was a group of them that really focused on, that parity between your HTML and your rendered DOM being the gateway to reliable citations to your content being used in the answers. So July 14th, we talked about symmetry before semantics. Meaning is useless without proof. And that's the one-to-one parity. I feel like I'm hopefully preaching to the choir, that symmetry between your raw HTML and the picture of your content is essential. It's mandatory in terms of staying reliable. And this is all about a new term, semantic geometry. You probably haven't heard me say that too much, but you want your expertise to be evaluated and content to be rewarded. You have to invest in proving first that your HTML is the same as your visual page, that what you tell the machine is exactly what you're telling the human. In July 21st, the Trust Sentinel, I found that there were automated, like clockwork, verification crawls that track a server's health in real time. So until you prove that your server health is steady, meaning that there are no more crawls than are necessary to access the true URL to your content. So both Google and Bing are doing the same thing, and they're going to come knocking on that server door. In fact, I also talked about how I uncovered a diagnostic based on server logs to identify the difference between a site hit with a helpful content penalty or some other technical issue. July 8th, this was the Google agent with a secret handshake. That basically we learned, and this is through the crawl budget documentation, Google doesn't always come from their own IPs. Yeah, there's a secret, super stealth handshake that it does with servers. And then, of course, last week, August 11th, last but not least, in my explanation, explaining why these correlational studies that look at, tiny, the output from the queries, they fail because they don't look at what the models are actually doing to get that result. It's as though every model is working like a search engine. So in that whole sort of, as I examined all that, it inspired a single variable. It's a one-factor test that's repeatable using the same software and standard behavior that all models are built on. And so by doing so, we proved that symmetry, the one-to-one parity of the code, what we say to the machine, when it's identical to the rendered DOM, it shows that the fewer crawls are necessary. So that's a very low computational drag on the systems. But the mismatch of it is what doubles the compute tax on that. And technically, those were very simple test pages. So if you have a lot of JavaScript that has to unpack, your computational tax can go up much more than double. If you want to read the test write-up, it's on VizzEx. The URL is vizzex.ai/labs. And it's a bit of highly textured reading. I will give you that. So I recommend that you may want to watch the video on the crawl or no crawl channel. I'll put the URLs in the description here, but you can just go to the crawl or no crawl, the last two videos. So the first one was the single variable test demonstration. And the second one, I actually answered a bonus question. Can you pass the symmetry gate without schema? And if you can, what does it mean to your brand intellectual property? So hope you enjoyed that. So anyway, not too shabby, I'm going to say, to cover that much ground during the summer. And next week, I'm going to share with you about the upcoming spam and core updates we're about to go into. And as you can tell, I've got some receipts before they roll out. Well, I'm Carolyn Holzman, and that's it for me this week. VizzEx Pro software organizes your server signature that LLMs are built to trust. So also feel free to use symmetrygate.ai. It's a diagnostic tool. It's free. You can find it just going to symmetrygate.ai. You can also follow me on LinkedIn, subscribe to the podcast, and post any questions you may have on the Confessions YouTube channel. So let's get deliberate with our citation frequency, and I'll see you next week.